My name is Rick Holloway. I'm 68 years old, born and raised in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Coal country, blue-collar bones. The kind of place where men measure time in shifts and seasons, not dreams. Before I start, hit like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow. Also, drop a comment and let me know which place you're watching from. I love seeing how far my video reaches. I spent 37 years as a civil engineer for the state, paid off my mortgage the slow, honest way, and buried my wife 8 years ago. After that, I learned how to live quietly once the noise fades. What I didn't know then was that this quiet life, this discipline, this calm, was about to be mistaken for weakness. My days are simple now. Morning coffee from Wawa, black, no sugar. The local paper folded the same way every time. Sunday afternoons watching the Eagles, even when they play like they're allergic to winning. I don't chase excitement. I earned my peace. That's why, when my son called me one October evening and said, "Dad, we're taking you to Cancun for New Year's," I honestly thought he was joking. Cancun, Mexico. All-inclusive resorts, turquoise water, fireworks at midnight. It sounded like something people my age watch on television, not something they fly to. But my son, Daniel Holloway, didn't laugh. Daniel is 42, MBA, corporate job out of New Jersey. Even as a kid, he had a way of sounding certain, like he'd already run the numbers in his head. After his mother passed, that certainty hardened into something else. A kind of quiet authority. Protective, maybe, or managerial. "Come on, Dad," he said. "You've earned this. One trip, one new year. Just family." Family is a word that still moves things inside me. Then his wife came on the line, Melissa Holloway. Melissa is 39. Works in brand strategy. Perfect posture, perfect timing, perfect smile. She has a talent for making suggestions sound like favors. I never disliked her, but I'd learned, over the years, that polish often hides impatience. "We want memories with you, Rick," she said warmly. "Life's too short not to celebrate together." That should have been my first pause. But grief makes you generous. Loneliness makes you agreeable. So I said yes. The flight from Philadelphia was long enough to remind me my knees aren't 30 anymore. Daniel and Melissa sat together across the aisle, sharing headphones, whispering, laughing softly. Every so often, Melissa glanced at me and smiled. Not the casual kind, the measured kind. I told myself I was imagining things. Age has a way of turning instincts into self-doubt. You start questioning your own radar. Cancun greeted us with heat and color. Palm trees wrapped in lights. Music everywhere. The resort looked like a postcard somebody decided to overdo. Fireworks banners hung across the lobby. New Year's Eve spectacular. Daniel spread his arms wide. "Not bad, huh, Dad?" I nodded. "Your mother would have liked this." The smile slipped from his face for just a second. Melissa stepped in smoothly. "Rick, wait till you see the ocean from your room. It's healing. Honestly, healing." People use that word when they don't know what else to offer. That first night, we had dinner by the water. A mariachi band played somewhere behind us. Melissa ordered wine without asking. Daniel talked about the economy, interest rates, layoffs, housing prices. "Nothing's stable anymore," he said. "You can't trust systems." I shrugged.
Ive trusted verse.
Melissa tilted her head. "But you've always been careful, Rick. Especially with what you've built." "What I've built?" I asked. "Your life," she said. "Your assets." There it was, lightly placed, almost polite. I let it pass. That night, jet-lagged and half asleep, I lay in bed listening to waves hit the shore. Around 2 in the morning, voices drifted through the thin wall. Daniel's voice low, tense. Melissa replied, quieter. "He hates conflict, and he trusts you." Paper rustled. "Once he signs," Daniel added, "we don't have to worry anymore." My heart started beating the way it used to when I heard bad news at work. Fast, but focused. Once he signs. I sat up in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it was about something else. Trips mess with your head. But some sentences don't leave room for imagination. The next morning, Melissa brought me coffee without asking how I take it. She touched my shoulder when she handed it to me. "You sleep okay?" she asked. "Like a rock," I lied. Daniel suggested a walk on the beach. We sat in lounge chairs facing the water. The ocean looked endless, calm on the surface. That should have been a warning. "Dad," Daniel said, clearing his throat, "there's something we've been meaning to talk to you about." Melissa smiled. "Nothing bad. Just planning." "Planning what?" I asked. "The future," Daniel said. "You know how complicated things can get if they're left undone." Melissa reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. Thick, organized, tabs sticking out. "A lot of families handle these things proactively," she said. "Avoids stress later." I didn't touch the folder. "You mean my house?" I said. Daniel hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "And savings," Melissa added gently. "So there are no misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings. You flew me to another country," I said slowly. "To have me sign documents?" Daniel frowned. "Dad, don't make it sound like that." "We even arranged a lawyer," Melissa said quickly. "International estate planning. Very reputable." I looked at my son's hands. They were shaking. Just slightly, but enough. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't confidence. This was fear. Fear dressed up as control. I felt something settle inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Resolve. "I need time," I said. Daniel exhaled sharply. "The appointment's tomorrow." I looked at him. Really looked. The boy I taught to ride a bike. The teenager I defended when teachers doubted him. The man now sitting across from me, hoping I wouldn't notice the cracks. "All right," I said calmly. "I'll think about it." That night, fireworks rehearsed in the distance. The resort buzzed with anticipation. Everyone counting down to a new year. I sat alone on my balcony, the ocean stretching into darkness. And I made a phone call, one they never expected. By the time the sun came up, I already knew something important. I wasn't confused. I wasn't cornered. And I wasn't afraid. What I felt was something colder and steadier. The kind of calm you get right before you make a decision you can't undo. I watched the sunrise from the balcony. Cancún waking up below me. Staff raking sand into perfect lines. Couples already claiming lounge chairs like territory. Everyone pretending this was a fresh start. I thought about how many New Years I'd lived through. Wars on television. Recessions. My wife's last New Year weak smile. Blanket over her knees. Insisting she'd stay up till midnight and falling asleep at 10. Life doesn't reset just because the calendar flips. People do. Breakfast was quiet. Too quiet. Daniel barely touched his food. Melissa kept checking her phone, tapping messages, forcing brightness into her voice like she was rehearsing optimism. "So," she said casually, buttering toast. "Today's pretty relaxed. Spa, maybe a walk, then the appointment." She said the appointment the way you say dinner reservations. Daniel looked up at me. "Dad, you okay?" I met his eyes. Never better. That wasn't a lie. The lawyer's office was a short drive from the resort. Clean. Minimal. Glass walls, abstract art, air conditioning that worked too hard. The receptionist smiled like she'd practiced it in a mirror. The lawyer introduced himself as Eduardo Morales. Perfect English. Crisp suit. Efficient movements. He shook my hand firmly. "Mr. Holloway, pleasure." Daniel leaned forward immediately. Melissa slid the folder onto the desk like she was delivering evidence. They were ready. Eduardo explained things in a smooth, practiced voice. Cross-border considerations. Streamlining. Simplicity. Words meant to lull, not inform. I listened. Not to him. To my son. Daniel kept nodding too fast. Jumping in to finish sentences. Correcting details that didn't matter. His knee bounced under the table. That's when I understood something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. He wasn't doing this because he wanted my house. He was doing this because he was scared of not having it. Fear had replaced love somewhere along the way. And fear makes people sloppy. "Rick," Melissa said softly. This is really for your peace of mind. I looked at her. Is it? She blinked. Just once. Eduardo slid the papers toward me. You may sign here, Mr. Holloway, and here. The pen lay between us. I picked it up. Daniel's shoulders dropped in relief so fast it almost hurt to watch. And then I set the pen back down. I need a minute, I said. Melissa's smile stiffened. We've gone over everything. I know, I said. I just need air. Daniel opened his mouth to argue, then stopped himself. Of course, he said. Take your time. Outside, the heat hit me like a wall. I stood on the sidewalk, listening to traffic, letting the moment stretch. This was the pivot. Not the papers. Not the lawyer. I thought about my wife again. How she used to say, Rick, people show you who they are when they think you owe them. I realized I didn't owe anyone anything anymore. When I went back inside, I didn't sit down. I'm not signing today, I said. Melissa stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. Rick, Daniel's voice cut in. Dad, you said you'd think about it. I did. And my answer's not today. Eduardo cleared his throat. Perhaps another time. No, Melissa said sharply, then caught herself. I mean, this trip was planned around this. There it was. Not around me. Around this. Daniel finally snapped. Why are you making this difficult? That word again. Difficult. I looked at him. Calmly. Slowly. I didn't raise you to rush people into decisions, I said. His face flushed. You raised me to be practical. I raised you to be decent. Silence dropped into the room like a heavy object. Eduardo suddenly found something fascinating on his desk. Melissa exhaled hard. Rick, you don't understand the pressure we're under. Pressure. Not love. Not concern. Pressure. That was all I needed to hear. The ride back to the resort was tense. No one spoke. Cancun's bright colors felt artificial now. Too loud. Too cheerful. That afternoon, Melissa knocked on my door. She didn't wait for an answer. I just want to be honest with you, she said, arms crossed. Daniel's been carrying a lot. This would ease things. Ease things for who? I asked. She hesitated. That hesitation answered me. Later, Daniel tried a different approach. Sat beside me by the pool. Dad, he said quietly. I'm worried about you being alone. I laughed. Not loudly, not bitterly. Just once. You're worried about my house being empty, I said. Not me. He didn't deny it. That night, the fireworks exploded over the ocean. Guests cheered. Champagne corks popped. Melissa hugged Daniel tightly at midnight. I stood a few steps away, watching colors burst and fade. That's when my phone buzzed. One message, then another. From Pennsylvania. I didn't smile. I didn't need to, because while my son thought this trip was about getting something from me, I finally understood what it was really about. Seeing who I still was when everything familiar was taken away. And I liked the answer. There's a certain clarity that comes when you've already lost the worst thing you'll ever lose. For me, that was my wife, Eleanor. After the funeral, after the casseroles stopped showing up, after the house went quiet in a way that felt permanent, I noticed something subtle. People didn't stop caring. They started assuming. Friends spoke slower. Neighbors checked in more often. Even Daniel began offering help I hadn't asked for. At first, I called it kindness. Then I watched a man I knew, retired, widowed, sharp as a tack, lose his house because he trusted the wrong person to handle things. That's when I stopped watching my money and started watching people. The morning after New Year's Eve, Cancun felt hollow. Decorations still up, music turned down. Like a party someone forgot to clean. Daniel knocked on my door. He didn't wait for an answer. Dad, he said, rubbing his face. We need to talk. Melissa stood behind him in the hallway. Arms folded tight, jaw locked. I stepped aside. Come in. They sat. I stayed standing. You embarrassed us yesterday, Daniel said. That word again. Embarrassed, I repeated. Yes, Melissa cut in. In front of a professional. I nodded slowly. So that's the concern. Daniel's voice dropped. We're worried about what happens if you don't take this seriously. I leaned against the desk. I've never taken anything lightly in my life. Silence. Then Melissa said, "We're trying to protect you." I looked at her. "You're trying to control the ending." Daniel looked down. That's when I decided it was time for them to understand who'd actually been patient. "I made arrangements years ago," I said. Melissa let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Arrangements? After your mother died?" I said, turning to Daniel. "I learned something important. Grief makes you generous. Age makes people bold." Daniel frowned. "What are you talking about?" "It means," I said evenly, "I learned what happens when people mistake quiet for unprepared." Melissa stepped forward. "Rick, if this is about not trusting us." "This isn't about trust," I said. "It's about foresight." Daniel stood up. "What arrangements?" I walked to my suitcase and pulled out a thin folder. Not thick, not dramatic, worn at the edges. "I didn't prepare because I was scared of you," I said. "I prepared because I've lived long enough to see how pressure changes people." I handed Daniel the page. He read it once, then again. Melissa leaned over his shoulder. Her face drained of color. The room went quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Daniel's hand tightened around the paper like it might disappear if he squeezed hard enough. "This doesn't make sense," Melissa said. "You can't just." "I can," I said. "And I already did." The house in Pennsylvania wasn't waiting. It was protected. Not hidden. Not weaponized. Structured with time and intention. Daniel looked up at me. "You planned this." "I prepared," I said. "There's a difference. I sat across from too many men." "This is unbelievable," Melissa muttered. "Who thought love would outlive pressure?" I continued. "It doesn't. Character does." Daniel swallowed hard. "I didn't do this to punish anyone," I said. "I did it so I'd know who could wait." Melissa shook her head. "So this was a test?" "No," I said. "This was patience meeting urgency." Daniel sat down heavily. "So what happens now?" I met his eyes. "Now," I said, "nothing changes." Melissa laughed sharply. "That's impossible." "It's not," I replied. "You just don't get to force the future anymore." They left without another word. The door clicked shut, and for the first time on the trip I felt relief, not triumph. I walked along the beach alone, shoes in my hand, sand cool beneath my feet. I thought about how often preparation gets mistaken for fear, how wisdom looks unnecessary until it saves you. My phone buzzed. A message from Harold, my attorney back home in Pennsylvania. A man who'd known me longer than Daniel had been alive. "Everything's in place. Exactly how you planned." I typed back one word. "Good." That evening, Daniel found me by the water.
No, Melissa.
"I didn't know," he said. "I know," I replied. "I thought you didn't want to deal with things." "I didn't want to be rushed," I said. "There's a difference." He nodded slowly. "Are you angry?" I shook my head.
No. I'm disappointed.
That landed harder. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but didn't. Sometimes silence is the most honest response left. As the sun dipped into the water, I realized something quietly important. This trip wasn't a mistake. It was a test. Not the one they designed. The one life offered me. And for the first time since Eleanor died, I knew something for sure. I wasn't just living out the years I had left. I was still choosing how they'd be treated. I flew home alone, but I wasn't worried. What they thought they could take from me had already slipped through their fingers. The tension of Cancun still lingered. The lawyer's papers, the inheritance they'd hoped I'd sign, the pressure in that hotel suite. All of it contrasted sharply with the quiet I was about to step back into. The taxi carried me through familiar Pennsylvania streets. Snow-dotted lawns, drifting slowly in the winter air. Porch lights glowed softly. Chimneys exhaled thin trails of smoke. Each familiar detail felt sharper, alive. Inside, the house smelled of aged wood and Eleanor's candle. Her birthday card rested on the table, a small reminder of the life that mattered more than contracts or property. I poured a cup of coffee, watching steam curl upward. The warmth filled my hands. Then the phone buzzed. It was Daniel. I let it ring twice. One deliberate beat. Another. I answered calmly. "Hey, Dad. We." His words stumbled, hesitant, uncertain. The certainty of Cancún replaced by hesitation. I let him fumble. Every pause underscored the power shift. "Dad. We just thought." Another beat. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the tension linger. Then I said deliberately, "Daniel, everything's in place. Exactly how I planned." Silence. What do you mean?" His voice cracked. A small, controlled smile. "I gave you everything you needed, just not everything I owned." Melissa's message followed soon after, careful, tentative. I replied once. "Some things, once protected, don't need to be defended again." Later, I stepped onto the porch. Snow spiraled in soft streams across the glow of streetlights. A single chimney sent smoke curling into the night sky. The wind whispered around the house. I thought back to Cancún. Faces flushed with greed, hands tightening on contracts, eyes wide with disbelief. Every memory reminded me. Foresight and patience always trump pressure. A few days later, Daniel called again. Short sentences, hesitation, apologies. Every pause, every careful word, reinforced what I already knew. Melissa's texts arrived next. Thoughtful, careful. I didn't reply. Silence now was my response, a quiet but powerful assertion of control. I returned to the porch one evening, coffee in hand. Stars twinkled above. Snow drifted in gentle spirals. Smoke rose lazily from a distant chimney. A slow pan could capture all three elements together, building visual interest while reinforcing calm triumph. I let the words echo in my mind. Some things, once protected, don't need to be defended again. The stars blinked. The snow fell. The chimney smoke curled. And for the first time since Cancún, I felt completely at peace. The contrast was clear. Tension abroad, calm at home, patience prevailing over haste. If this story touched you, please like the video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. And don't forget to comment. Tell us where you're watching from.